extended even into death. We know he took that saw and cut him to the bone because he blamed that child for the murders of his siblings. That innocent child he blamed. That is the real Timothy Jones when we talk about character of the defendant. You heard how when Natan stopped breathing, he refused to call 911. All so he could save himself. That's evidence of the character of the defendant, and that's the real Timothy Jones. Throughout that night, he made choice after choice after choice after choice. 4 more times to murder his children. We know from his statement to law enforcement that Natan was killed and that Mira and Eli were both witnesses to that. He talked about that. He spoke about that in that statement that you heard. Mira and Eli knew exactly what happened in that house. And Christina Elke lived just next door, a stone's throw away. He wasn't going to leave any witnesses alive. So think about that when you consider the character of the defendant. That's the real Timothy Jones. It was all about buying him more time. It was all about him escaping justice. It's him over those precious children. As a jury, everyone in this room is aware of the sacrifice and duty that you've been called to bear. It's more than any county could ever ask of its citizens. And each of you were qualified to serve because during those initial qualifications, each of you testified that you would consider aggravated circumstances and mitigating circumstances, and that in the appropriate case, that each of you could render a death verdict. So when we talk about that, about why the state is seeking the death penalty, I ask you to keep in mind, it's not about vengeance. It's about a punishment that truly fits this crime. An age-old definition of justice is to render every man his due. And now the question for you is, what is his due? What was Timothy Jones due? Throughout this trial, you've heard evidence that is so brutal, so callous, and so vicious, it can only be described as evil. A clear and unmistakable evil. He bears sole responsibility for the murders of his children. He alone is responsible for the murders of Mira, Eli, Natan, Gabriel, and Abigail. He bears responsibility for the suffering that's been inflicted for the rest of the lives of everyone who loved him so dearly. These wounds, when he left, these wounds won't heal. So now you will hear evidence as to why. In this case, the appropriate sentence is death. Thank you.
You don't have to kill Tim Jones. We don't kill people who are sick. We respect your verdict. You took time, you were thoughtful, you were careful in your deliberation, and we appreciate that. By your verdict, you have guaranteed that Tim Jones will never walk free again, that one day he will die in a prison cell much like that. Each of you agreed during voir dire that in order to determine whether or not the person lived or died, that you would need to determine the value of the life, and that you would need to examine the whole life in order to determine its value. That's what this phase of the case is about. Each of you told us that you believe that life without possibility of parole was an appropriate sentence for somebody who has been found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the murder of 5 children. You understood that any argument that says just because he's been found guilty of the murder of 5 children, he therefore deserves the death penalty is an illegal argument. Law is always satisfied with life. In this case, in any case, in the worst case you can imagine, the law is always satisfied with life. Life means life without the possibility of parole. It means that he will die in prison. The way that this decision is made is through what's called mitigation. Mitigation is any reason that any one of you chooses to vote for a life penalty. Mitigation is not an excuse or a justification. No one can excuse or justify what happened, and nobody's asking you to excuse it. But it is up to each one of you to decide whether or not there are mitigating factors and what value you place on them. They can come from anywhere. Mitigation doesn't have to be related to the murders. It can be from his life, his family, his individual human frailty. It can be anyone's reason to vote for life. You, through your verdict, have already found the existence of 2 aggravating circumstances, and you did it as a group, you did it unanimously, you did it beyond reasonable doubt. Mitigation is different. Mitigation is individual. Mitigation does not have the burden of proof. Not every one of you has to agree on whether or not something is mitigated. You're empowered to find mitigation for yourself. It can be something that the defense presents. It can be something that the state presents. It can be something that is important to you in deciding whether or not Tim lives or dies. You decide for yourself what is or is not mitigated. Remember that whole exercise we went through with each of you, where one juror could say, I believe that maybe he's mentally ill, maybe he has brain damage, and that while it didn't rise to the level of the defense, it's still a reason for me to vote for life. And another juror can say, I disagree. But I think that Tim's family has seen enough death. And for me, that is a reason to choose life. That's okay. One juror could say, I think that he confessed and he took the police to the children's bodies, and to me that is mitigated. And another juror could say, I disagree, but I think that he can be safely housed in the Department of Corrections for the rest of his life, and for that reason I choose to vote for life. That's okay. Each of you don't have to agree. You're allowed to give whatever value you want to any mitigation that you find. You also understood in voir dire that you don't have to have a reason. Each of you said that you could respect the right of a juror who's told you, I don't have a reason, I can't put it into words, but I feel that life is appropriate for me. And you said you would respect each other's right to do that. You can also give life based on your concept of mercy alone. Most of you agreed that mercy was not something that somebody earns. It's something that's freely bestowed on another. It's grace. And the law says that if you, in your person, your own personal moral choice, decide to extend mercy, the law is satisfied with a life vote. This decision about whether or not a person lives or dies is an individual moral judgment. It's an extremely personal choice that each of you have to make. You all agreed to respect each other's individual moral judgment, even if you disagreed with it. You all told us that if you saw somebody being bullied or intimidated out of what they had arrived at as their individual moral judgment or belittled for their moral choice, that you would put a stop to it. And if necessary, you would send a note to the judge. The law anticipates that when 12 people are making an individual moral judgment about whether or not a person lives or dies, that disagreement is okay, it's expected. Only if 12 people all arrive at the same individual moral judgment for death will 10 be killed. Whatever your 12 individual moral judgments are, the law will be satisfied and the case will be over. Your oath is to meaningfully consider the evidence, arrive at your own individual moral judgment, and have that individual moral judgment returned in court. The state is going to present to you some truly horrific images. They're going to show you images of the children and the condition in which they were recovered by the police. This loss and harm doesn't belong to the solicitor. These children were the great-grandchildren of Roberta. They're the grandchildren of Tim and Julie. They're the nieces and nephews of Travis, Tyler, and Jackie. They deal with that loss and that harm every day. But if you can see past that harm, if you cannot be pushed to death by that harm, you can hear past it. You will hear lots of reasons why Tim should get life. You will hear about things that happened to Tim that weren't his fault. You will hear about struggles and opportunities that Tim took to overcome obstacles in his life. You will hear that even in prison, his life has value and meaning to his family. God can use people in dark places. Thank you.
I got to address one thing real quick before we get started calling witnesses. Y'all step in the jury room for a couple minutes and be right back out. All right?